So I just want to give you a little rundown on what you might be doing as you peer review one of these introductions using Google Docs. So you should get a link from me that gets you to the document. I have removed the identifying information from the document, so you shouldn't see who wrote it, but you should be able to see their paper. I'm going to paste in a kind of a header sheet here so you can see some questions that might guide your review. I'd like you to consider these questions and provide answers to them, and also to go through the document and suggest changes, make edits, put comments on however you like, and I'll just show you how to do that in Google Docs if you aren't familiar with that. So one thing you'll want to do initially is over here. Right now I'm in editing mode, and I want to switch this to suggesting. And so everything that I do, whatever I type in this document, is going to come up as a suggested change, or I'll be able to put in some comments there. So I don't know if that'll be helpful for this initial part, but it'll at least keep track of the changes I've made. I'm going to do something. I have a bigger screen here, so I'm going to take advantage of my big screen, and I'm actually going to open two simultaneous windows with the same document, something I like to do in Google Docs. So I'm just going to copy the link to this and start a new browser window, paste the same link, and now I have the same document, and I can make changes to one, and it automatically changes the other. So obviously it's not too useful if I'm doing the same page, but let's say I had one document here with the recommendations, with the overall questions, and then another document with the text I might want to make some comments on. So I guess something to watch out for is I've opened this and it's still in editing mode. I'm going to switch this one also to suggesting mode. And maybe it makes more sense for me to put changes in this top section in the editing mode. That might not be as important. I guess if you make changes in the text, that'd be really nice for the student who you're reviewing for them to see the changes you've made to their text. And for me, that's kind of a natural editing feature. So if you're reading somebody else's writing and something doesn't make sense, you can try to fix it, or you can just comment that it probably needs fixing. So that's a little bit up to you. You'll be able to put in comments. So let's say I wanted to indicate that the second word in a species name is not capitalized. If I highlight text, it gives me this little bubble over here, add a comment. I think you can also right click or use a menu function for that. So let me just make a comment there and say the second word of a species binomial is not capitalized. So that comment would be seen. I guess I'll just go for broke and make the change also. So I made a change here and actually crosses out the big M and put in the little m. So that will show up as a suggested change. If a person was moving forward with edits and they wanted just to accept your changes, that will be possible. What I plan to do is to export these in a way that you, as the reviewer, also won't be seen. Your identity won't be known to the person whose paper you're reviewing. So you don't know their name and they don't know your name, and that leaves it a little more free to make comments. Of course, all throughout this, you want to be generous and understanding. There might be people who haven't done this before, and you don't have to blast them for everything that's wrong. Try to find some good points to comment on, as well as maybe things worth fixing. Okay, so I won't maybe go through this whole review, but I'll show you the process of making changes. So with my simultaneous windows, I could go through first and just do a little read through once and try to make sense of the paper and call out something about grammar, for example. Maybe I'll do that first. So eye color, pigments, yada, yada. Characteristics, all right. So white and scarlet-eyed mutant flies. Depending, one of the ways that students sometimes get a little bit hung up on these is if they are maybe not treating the colors like genes. So white is a color, but white is also the name of a gene. So if you're referring to the gene, so the white and scarlet mutants, these are mutants for the scarlet gene. So I'll put a little note in there. Let me try a right click here, comment. All right, so comment, there's also a keyboard shortcut there, and say scarlet is the name of a gene and should be italicized. So in my class, that's why I emphasize talking about scarlet eye color versus maybe bright red eye color. One is specific to a gene and one is descriptive of a color, and they're not exactly the same thing. The citations are good here. This is one of the things you might be looking for. So last name of the author, year of publication, semicolon separating two publications, that all works for me. Nice job breaking into paragraphs. The experiment was conducted to determine the double mutant offspring. And then getting up to a hypothesis, that's good. So the hypothesis, the double mutants will have no coloration or small hints of red coloring. Both of the white and scarlet mutant pigments follow the omicron pathway. That's not entirely true, so maybe put a little note in there. I know more about these than you might, so don't feel like you have to comment on every little bit of the science here. But I might indicate that the gene is also involved in the pteridine pathway. White and colors. White is one thing stands out to me here. So white is a sex-linked gene. So I'm gonna take these and put them in notation that gives our X chromosomes. So the female flies would have XX with their W+ alleles. The male flies would have an X here, but XY. And that'd be important in making the predictions about the offspring. This paper has the materials and methods. You didn't have to include that. So we were just looking at introduction, title. So title, scarlet-eyed females and white-eyed male, double mutant offspring. One thing I like to see in titles is some indication of the results. And skip over these. This shouldn't be part of what you're grading necessarily. So if there are results, I'll take those out before you get them. Reference section. So here we've got authors, year of publication. I'm not too particular about the formatting here. Just sort of making sure that these are in order, alphabetized. They indicate at least the important information. So every citation, no matter what format you're using, should have authors, year of publication, article title, journal name, and then the page numbers and the issue number that the publication happened in. And then I guess you could double check and just make sure everything that's cited in the introduction is also present in the literature cited section at the end. Looks like a pretty good number of citations. So they're talking about the function of these enzymes and giving credit to people who figured that out. So good job there. So overall, pretty good. I'd recommend just sort of going through and reading it through one time, getting it to make sense for you. And then after that, you can add in some features on your reviewer summary. So title, mostly good, needs to suggest something about the results. Does the introduction include background information that is relevant? Looks good. Enough reference citations. Looks good. Introduced with detail about their role in pigment synthesis. So 3 proteins sequencing ABC transporter family. I'd say maybe there could be a little bit more about what this has to do with the final colors of the eyes. So, what is a precursor molecule? would explain a little bit more about this pigment deposition pathway. So maybe include a little bit more about how transporters to relate to the final pigments. Is the hypothesis stated clearly? Double mutants will have no coloration. So that is the hypothesis. And I like to make sure that people are not just, it doesn't look like they're just guessing at a color, but something about explaining why that should be the case. So both follow the Omicron pathway. So this is missing a little bit of information because the Omicron pathway makes the brown pigment, but this doesn't address the issue of why the white-eyed flies don't have any eye color. That's also because they can't make the red eye color pigment. So that's kind of missing a little bit there. I might put this in here, include something. The red pigments, pteridine pathway. Again, this is something that's maybe more familiar to me, but you can use what you learned writing your paper as you are reviewing somebody else's paper. Just the introduction, briefly introduce the experiment. The experiment was conducted to yada, yada, crossing a scarlet-eyed female. That looks pretty good enough. So mostly, I think one of the biggest things you can do for somebody else is just help them figure out if their paper is making enough sense. It can be very helpful to have another pair of eyes to look at a paper and tell somebody where the gaps are, if their logical conclusions make sense, and so on, if all their grammar and spelling is good. Yeah, and if you see something that you like, feel free to comment on that. Say, good job with this one, or that really made sense to me, or something like that. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So make the comments in the text, change the text, comment, kind of a combination of the both strategies. You'll probably end up making at least a few comments. Try to be thorough and help this person make improvements to their paper. And then also fill in this summary page here to give them maybe some tips about what they could do to improve.